All right, welcome to Councilmember Russ Melton and Fremont Union High School District Board Member Naomi Nakano Matsumoto and other elected officials. We also have a number of commissioners, Planning Commission, Arts Commission, Sustainability Commission. Who else am I missing?
Patrick Ahrens and Wendy Ho.
Oh, yes, yes. Wendy Ho's a speaker who we're going to introduce shortly. Wendy is with the Office of County Supervisor Otto Lee. And we have another one of our speakers, Captain Lima from Sunnyvale DPS, who's also going to be speaking. And yes, Patrick Ahrens, also Foothill Danza Community College. All right, with that, why don't we move into our agenda? We have a few items today. One is two of them are on gun safety. We have representative from the county and also representative from Sunnyvale Department of Public Safety will be speaking about gun safety relating to what we can do in our city and county with respect to this epidemic of violence that we have in our country. And then we'll also cover a summary of the City Council study issue and budget issue workshop that was held this Thursday. It was an all-day meeting. And if you didn't get to spend your day that way, we're here to summarize the key points of what happened. And we've got a number of speakers will be talking to the different categories of issues that were ranked. All right, with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mike to introduce our speakers.
Okay, well, let's start with Wendy Ho, who's again is Chief of Staff for District 3, Santa Clara County, which is Otto Lee's district. We know Otto very well here in Sunnyvale. Wendy Ho is a community advocate and civic leader with over 10 years of experience working on public policy at the local, state, and federal level. Prior to leading the District 3 office and team, the majority of Wendy's career was in the nonprofit sector, serving with a number of organizations, the Silicon Valley Council for Nonprofits, United Way, Silicon Valley, Asian and Pacific Islander American Health Forum, and U.S. Congress. She's also served on the San Jose Evergreen Community College District Board of Trustees since 1912. And she earned her MPA.
Probably not 1912.
She earned her MPA from Indiana University in Bloomington, my old stomping ground, and BA in political science and Japanese studies from UC San Diego. So without any further ado, thank you for coming today, Wendy. And we saw the excellent op-ed by Cindy Chavez summarizing what the county is doing to respond to gun violence in our community. And so we're happy to get an update on what's going on.
All right, and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Mike, and to the club for the kind invitation. Supervisor Lee sends his regrets this afternoon. He is traveling, and so he wanted to extend his warmest greetings to all of you, longtime friends of the club. So, and I'm here to kind of, as Mike alluded to, talk about some of the things that the county is working on to really address this, as Crystal mentioned, this really terrible epidemic we have around gun violence. And as some of you are aware, gun safety is one of those issues that Supervisor Lee cares very, very deeply about. And fortunately, in the wake of the shooting that we've had this week at Michigan State, which was also just on the heels of Half Moon Bay and Monterey Park. I don't know about you, but I don't know how much more we can all stomach collectively. Obviously, the VTA shooting and the Gilroy Garlic Festival shooting are still top of mind for many of us at the county. And we are doing our part to really promote gun safety and doing what we can to get unwanted firearms off the streets. But before I kind of launch into a little bit about what the county is doing, I want to ground us in some local data we have around gun violence. And one of the things that I wanted to bring up, and if you haven't had a chance to read this really compelling study from the Santa Clara County Public Health Department, I'll put the link in the chat. Last year, there was a report that our public health department did on the cost of gun violence. And it was pretty staggering, some of the data points that came back. The cost of gun violence in our county totals more than $1.2 billion. Let me say that again, $1.2 billion, with about 73 million of that coming to costs that the public is enduring. 73 million spent on police, medical, and criminal justice agency services. And between the years of 2006 to 2020, these costs have grown annually and have now surmounted over that growth between that 2016 to 2020 period has grown over by $35 million. What we also learned in this report, and that we were able to gather from state background check data, we know that 350,000 firearms were purchased and registered in our county between 2001 and 2015. 350,000 firearms. Yeah, yes, my shock and awe, Sue, as well. In 2021, county residents owned about 550,000 guns across our population of about 2 million people. And between 2017 and 2021, county residents averaged an average of 28,000 guns annually. So there are a lot of guns out in our homes here in Santa Clara County. And yeah, I don't want to go too much further into the report, but I do want to highlight a couple of recommendations that the study implores all of us to think about collectively as a community and the type of community we want to live in, right? Free of gun violence. One, I think this is a no-brainer, to adopt common sense gun safety policies and practices to ensure that there is gun safety for owners. And I know Captain Lima will speak a little bit about what Sunnyvale DPS is doing to help affect that. Two, I think this is something we all can do and we need to be doing more of, advocating for more prevention policies at all levels of government. Three, public awareness campaigns and education campaigns about gun violence prevention. And I'll talk a little bit about what Supervisor Lee and Supervisor Chavez will be doing in a matter of weeks to really help lift that up. Four, really expanding partnerships with behavioral health service providers, particularly ones that serve folks in ethnic communities to do crisis intervention, de-escalation, and provide more mobile mental health crisis services. So one of the things that Supervisor Lee, really touted on the campaign trail as he was running for supervisor was, having more systematic gun buyback events, because that is one of those low-hanging fruit type things that we can do to really get unwanted firearms off the streets. Last year, our office partnered with local law enforcement agencies and the district attorney's office to host 2 gun buyback events, one in Milpitas in May and one in Morgan Hill last December. And as you might imagine, we were able to collect a number of guns off the streets. And as a result of those efforts, we were able to collect 700 guns between the 2 events. And we had, I still kind of shock and awe when I see these numbers. 26 of those were assault style weapons. These are like really things that should not be on our streets, 26. And there were 7 ghost guns. So ones that were, kind of illegally manufactured, they might have been 3D printed. We were able to collect 7 ghost guns. No questions asked. People drove up to the site. Law enforcement removed the unwanted guns, and they were given where they were checked for it to see if they were in working order. They were given a receipt and they were paid cold hard cash, no questions asked. And we were able to collect 700 guns between those two events. And the city of Sunnyvale in 2020, there was another gun buyback event that was held where more than 500 guns were collected at that time. And then in 2019, as really a response to the shooting at the Gilroy Garlic Festival, the city of Gilroy hosted another event, a gun buyback event, where they collected almost 500 guns off the streets. And so that's still just a drop in the bucket. Again, hearing some of those staggering statistics I mentioned at the top of my presentation in terms of how many guns have been registered, there is a lot more that we can do. And as Supervisor Lee, this is something that he really wants to carry on and make sure that we institutionalize. And so, and I'll talk a little bit later more about what he and Supervisor Chavez will be doing to really kind of make that more of a formal county-wide program. One of the things that people don't really know about as well, we actually have a voluntary gun relinquishment program that the sheriff's office runs, where individuals can call our non-emergency sheriff's office line and let the dispatcher know that they have an unwanted gun in their possession. After calling, they can make arrangements to drop that gun off at our sheriff's office headquarters right near the Civic Center in San Jose, or they can drop it off at one of the substations in the West Valley or South County, which are open 8 to 3 Monday through Friday. But unlike those gun buyback programs, those events that I just spoke of, there is no incentive for people to turn in their weapon just beyond wanting to get it out of their hands. In other communities like in LA and in San Diego, Orange and San Diego County, you could actually call law enforcement and make arrangements for them to pick up that unwanted gun from your home. And so we would like to see if we could do something like that. Why should we place the burden on the gun owner if we can have our public safety officers go out and pick those unwanted guns from home so that we know that they'll be handled appropriately. So one of the things, again, that Supervisor Chavez and Lee will be introducing very soon is really how can we make that voluntary relinquishment program a little bit more robust. And I'll talk a little bit about what specifically they'll be asking the county to do at our next board meeting. I'll shift gears a little bit and talk about what our county is doing around just trying to bring stakeholders together. At our last board meeting, the board actually approved a new gun violence task force, which is housed at our district attorney's office. This task force includes the gun-related intelligence program team, or otherwise known as the GRIP team. The GRIP team is actually a national model for intelligence-led and collaborative gun violence response. And so part of the tasks that the task force has been charged with is a number of things. One, to think about threat response to potential active shooter situations. They're going to take a more robust and aggressive approach with criminal investigations, really looking at how we can better utilize gun violence restraining orders. They are going to be looking at gun seizures and being more aggressive about cracking down on folks who may be possessing guns illegally. And then also really thinking about how we can interrupt the illegal gun supply that seems to be running rampant, right? And so, doubling down on folks that are doing gun trafficking or manufacturing these ghost guns, right? Or thinking about how to disrupt those illegal distribution networks. And one of the other things that the task force will do, and something that Supervisor Lee has spoken very passionately about, is really getting guns out of the hands of people who shouldn't be having them in the first place, who may be prohibited either through a court order or some other violation. There are so many people who have been convicted of all sorts of crimes, or they have a restraining order against them, but they still have guns in their possession. And that's something that this task force will really take a very critical look at. And so one of the things that the supervisors also hoping the task force will do is thinking about how they can spread more awareness about gun violence restraining orders, because many of the folks that we've talked to in community don't know about what those are, how they can access them. And he's really calling on on the courts and really the law enforcement agencies to kind of work together to help promote that, but also make that process as transparent and easy as possible. And, you know, as an immigrant himself, Supervisor Lee is always very cognizant about how we can make, you know, those programs accessible to communities whose native language may not be English. And so we're looking at how we can translate applications to make it a little bit more approachable and accessible for people who may not have English as their first language. Some things that I guess I would be remiss if I didn't mention a little bit about some of the work that the county is doing around a trauma recovery center. Certainly after the VTA shooting, there was a need for a lot of community healing, and that effort has really kind of evolved into a trauma recovery center model that will have both county staff and community-based service providers from a variety of fields to work cross-sectionally around how to really heal that trauma that folks are experiencing, whether it be from, you know, mass violence or kind of, you know, something that might have happened, family abuse in their lives. So the center that the county is working on building will deliver that evidence-based treatment and intervention, clinical-based case management, care coordination among all those partners that are caring for that particular individual or family that may be, and again, they may be suffering the impact of trauma from these critical incidents, mass violence, and natural disasters like the fires that we've had over the past few summers. And so really this center will essentially be a one-stop shop for everyone that's been impacted by trauma. And we want to make that as easy for people to access those services. They are going to have a number of providers from, you know, cross departments, cross fields to really, you know, get to that source of healing for folks who've experienced trauma in their life. And so I just want to close and share a little bit more about what Supervisor Lee and Supervisor Chavez will be introducing at the next Board of Supervisors meeting on February 28th. So as I mentioned, you know, Supervisor Lee has been very big about institutionalizing these gun buyback events. And so one of the things that this policy referral or memo that will initiate the policymaking process will do is actually call on the county to basically come up with a plan so that we can have at least a minimum of 2 gun buyback events in our county annually. Specifically, they're asking the county to really commit the resources and the staffing to have those gun buybacks held annually, at least 2 a year. They are also going to ask the county to strengthen our existing voluntary gun relinquishment program through more outreach and options for providing for incentives for people to turn in unwanted guns to their program. So as I described our voluntary gun relinquishment program right now, you call the non-emergency sheriff's line. You say, I have a gun that I want to get rid of. You turn it in at the substation, the sheriff's office. They say, great, thank you. Have a nice day. They give you a receipt and call it a day. There's no incentive. Like if you were to turn in that gun at a gun buyback event. And so we're asking the county to see what options we have. We might be able to present folks that are interested in getting rid of the guns and then don't want to wait for the next gun buyback event, how they can still do that 24/7 at the sheriff's office or the sheriff's substations. And so we really would love your support about with this policy referral that's coming to the board on the 28th of February. If your folks are interested, I can put my email in the chat so that you can email me and let me know if you're interested in writing a letter of support or providing public comment in the meeting. We would certainly appreciate that. So I know I went over a bunch of information, and I'm gonna actually also include a couple of other links that might be helpful to you or someone who may be impacted by gun violence, and including a link to our gun violence and guns violence prevention page on Supervisor Lee's website. And of course, I always have to put a plug in for our newsletter. And if you're not getting our newsletter, I'll also put a link into the chat there. So with that, I've said a lot, and hopefully I've shared a little bit more than you already knew about what the county is doing. So hopefully I am happy to answer questions as folks are able.
Okay, well, please, raise your virtual hand if you have a question. I can just maybe make a couple, have a couple questions or comments. So you mentioned the gun buybacks, and it should be clear to everybody that guns are a special category. You can't just put them on free cycle or sell them on eBay or whatever, because that has to be, documented, and maybe there's background checks or something. So it's more problematic than maybe would be obvious. And also the red flag laws or the gun violence restraining orders. I'm sure you're quite correct that most people have no idea how to, make use of that. If they have a neighbor or relative or whatever who is clearly dangerous, they probably don't know where to go, or they're worried that somehow this will blow back to them if they call them. So do you have any, are there any kind of outreach programs or, public service announcements or anything? And we can certainly, like if it's a Facebook post, like we did with the Sunnyvale programs we'll hear about in a little bit, we can copy them on our website and share them to other people and help publicize them.
So great question, Mike. Unfortunately, we're kind of in the very beginning stages of trying to build out more of a more robust community outreach plan around those gun violence restraining orders and that process, right? I can't tell you how many times Supervisor Lee has gone out to speak with community groups just like the SunnyvaleDems Club and say, hey, did you know that you can actually get a gun violence restraining order? And people are like, what's that? And so we've had some conversations with local law enforcement in the court system and trying to figure out, can we think about collectively how we can leverage resources to get not only that information out, but make it available in a number of languages. And so we're taking a closer look at that to see how we can also, just more heavily promote that option to folks, especially in light of just the litany of mass shootings. I think people are just besides themselves about, what can we do locally, right, to help stem this gun violence that just seems to be enveloping our country. And so we would love all of your help, and if we have materials that are kind of user friendly, we'll definitely be happy to share that and pass that along.
Okay, and it looks like we have a question from Mayor Klein. If I could figure out how to unmute him.
I'm unmuted.
There we go.
So Wendy, thank you for being here. Definitely. And the buyback programs. I pushed the DA for buyback programs when I first became mayor in 2019. And it wasn't until after the Gilroy shooting that finally it's like, oh yeah, because it's like, oh, you've already had a gun buyback. We just had one. Why would we do another one? And then we basically, after the shooting, things move forward from a county standpoint since we were all ready to do it, and had hundreds of guns. And I heard from lots of residents that were worried about, let's say, their elderly parents who had a gun in their closet, and they were worried that they didn't know what to do with them, and they were worried about dementia, senility, but also just their kids, the grandchildren in the house that might have access to the guns. And that was some of the guns that were brought back to that from the submittal from Chavez and Supervisor Lee. Is it planned to be moving around the county? From that
I think we do want to be cognizant that gun violence happens everywhere, and we want to be able to make sure that we're serving all parts of our county in that through the gun buyback program. So as you heard me say, Mayor, the last year, the two events that we had were one in Milpitas and the city of Milpitas had never had a gun buyback event. And then there was one in Morgan Hill in December. And so, I would imagine that we would think about doing something in North County, in Sunnyvale or Palo Alto, Los Altos, or even in Los Gatos, right? People, may have unwanted weapons, and just like if they've got elderly folks in their lives, as you mentioned, Mayor Klein, we hear that a lot from folks that are participating in these events. But we're also thinking about too. I think we've had started some initial conversations around also potentially having one in the city of San Jose. They haven't had one, I think, 5 or 6 years. And so I think with the change in the city council there may be some budding interest in wanting to host an event. So again, what we're putting forward is two a year at a minimum. And so we're not just limited to 2, but that has to be the baseline, right? So
Good.
thank you for
and I look forward to, and so is the red flag law promotion part of that submittal, that memo, or no?
As it is now, it is not.
Okay.
At the last Board of Supervisors meeting, the supervisor did give direction to think about how we can be using those red flag laws and how to promote that and how to make that a little bit more robust. And if what we're seeing is not to the board satisfaction, quite frankly, we may also issue a more very specific and aggressive referral or memo, as you've kind of kindly articulated. So
okay, thank you for that, because red flags laws have been on the books for about over 6 years now, and so for just to make sure everyone here knows, this allows family, friends, coworkers, neighbors to alert police, the district attorney's office, anonymously to protect the threat of a potential of violence from a potential gun owner, but it really depends on the public understanding that this is here, as well as basically informing people before it's too late. And I and council has made it very clear to public safety, our city attorney, and I've talked to the district attorney many times on this of utilizing this as much as possible and making sure that it's a critical tool in the toolkit to make sure that people that are having, let's say, mental issues, problems, and making threats to have something to deal with that. So looking forward to how that publicity comes out there. I know DPS has done something, on its social media sometime in the last few years, but I think making a concerted effort across the county would be very useful. So thank you for that, and thanks Supervisor Lee.
Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, and Sue? Okay.
Okay. Yeah. Boy, great presentation. Lots of jam-packed news and information. Thank you so much. It's really, really informative and helpful. I have one comment first, and that is, I had always thought that every time there was a mass shooting, or most times, that there was a rise in sale of guns. So I was really surprised to hear that you had a buyback after the Gilroy. What do you call these events? These shooting events, mass shooting events. And it was successful. It was very successful, it sounded like. So I'm wondering why that is not be a good model for, just have this as a mobile thing. We've got it all together, and something happens, we're ready to set up a gun buyback. I mean, that's just kind of the opposite of what I thought could happen or was happening. So I just wanted to make that comment. For questions, I wondered, it's been a long time since I've been in elementary or high school, or college for that matter, but do you have more robust education events in the schools already that deal with not just, this is Mr. Public Safety and he's your friend, and that's all, that's all good too, but that gives appropriate amount of information for those different levels of students?
So Sue, I can only speak. I'm going to take off my chief of staff hat for Supervisor Lee and put on my school board member hat. As you heard Mike mention,
school board member too.
Yes, I'm a school board member for a rival community college district, and we do, unfortunately, we run active shooter drills pretty regularly. All of our staff are trained on appropriate procedures for active shooters. A couple of other school board members on the call today. I don't want to put trustee Nakano Matsumoto on this spot, but I know that there, I think obviously this is just a glaring reality we have to protect our community, and the fact that we have to tell our children how to kind of defend and shield themselves is just heartbreaking to me. When I was a student, we were just doing earthquake drills. And now that you've got kindergartners that know how to barricade a closet, is just, it makes me wonder what does that say about our community, right? So I can't speak to what the K-12 system is doing. I can only share, my limited vantage point as from a community college district. But, we have, like I said, active shooter training and drills on our campuses. We do have a number of, kind of community groups that do neighborhood watch events and, on our campuses, and then share information about public safety, and really just kind of thinking about how we can work collectively and not just leave it to local law enforcement to protect us, but, and how we can work together to protect our neighbors. So I wish I had more I could share with you, Sue, but again, I just have my very limited lane in terms of what I've been seeing as a community college board member.
Sure. I just, thank you. I just have one other thing. What was it? Oh yeah. Well, it seems like those kinds of things, the drills, I think, I guess you have to do that. You just have to do it. But on the flip side is the trauma center that you're talking about, putting it together. To me, this is like the most exciting thing I've ever heard. If you can get the resources together to have that, and it becomes a resource that the community knows about, I think that is so needed. It is like, I can't put enough emphasis on it. I'm so happy to hear that, and good luck with that program. And if there's anything I can do in the future, I'm going to do it.
Thank you, Sue. And again, it was really just kind of an outgrowth of, what we saw after the VTA shooting, right? We had kind of the victim services. We had and I was remiss to say, the DA's office already has a very robust victim services unit program, where we actually help folks that have been, been victimized. But really what we saw after VTA, and again, thinking about the gunman and kind of the mental health issues he had, we really saw a need to kind of dig deeper and think about how we bring just collect a collection of resources together to help with that community healing. And it is going to be very evidence-based, but it's really going to meet people where they are, because we know there can be residual traumas. And again, it's not just limited to kind of episodes of violence. It could be abuse that might have happened in the home. It could be trauma that folks, endured as a part of being part of a natural disaster, or the wildfires that we've had pretty rampantly lately. And so it really is intended to be a one-stop shop for any type of kind of recovery and healing from trauma. So thank you, Sue, for that support.
Yes.
Crystal?
Yeah, thank you so much, Wendy. This was really helpful, and I learned a lot about all the things that the county is doing. When you first started out, you mentioned one thing that we could all do was being good advocates for policy at all levels. And I guess I'm just struggling with where the different jurisdictions have ability to take action, and like what the county could do versus what cities could do versus what the state is doing. And I know Governor Newsom announced some measures that he was hoping to get passed through the legislature this year relating to like sensitive places and things like that. And it's kind of a rambling question, but I know
No, you're fine.
San Jose kind of proposed a way to kind of rein in the costs, right? And pass the costs back to the gun owners, essentially, that for the just massive costs. And you mentioned $1 billion, right? That's
Staggering.
And it's not fair that everybody pays for that and not everybody has a gun. And and what do you think about those kind of policies that try to shift the burden of cost back to the gun owners?
Right. So let me try to take the first part of your question, Crystal, about, what can folks do kind of at all levels of government, right? So you heard me just talk about a few minutes ago about that policy referral that Supervisors Lee and Chavez are going to put together at our next board meeting on February 28th. We would welcome letters of support or, if folks want to make public comment at that meeting, we can send you the information about that and how to do that. And we can even send you some just suggested talking points. I can't speak to what's happening at the state or even the city level or even the federal level, but there are groups like Moms Demand Action that are really tracking kind of the gun violence prevention work at all levels of government, probably more at a state and federal level, and they are actively tracking legislation that is going to really help stem the cost of gun violence in our community and really just the traumatizing effects of that. Your second question about what I personally think about, putting the onus back on the gun owners. Yeah, I mean, if you're going to, and this is an opinion that Supervisor Lee shares very vehemently, he's always of the mind that, if you are going to own a gun, you need to be responsible for it. You need to know how to operate it safely and how to keep it stored safely. And I know Captain Lima is going to talk in a little bit about what, some programs that Sunnyvale DPS has available to help with that responsible gun ownership. In fact, that, the fact that it's easier in some states to basically, get a gun versus register a car is pretty jarring to me. And there really should be, really robust background checks everywhere. And unfortunately, that's not the case. So anything that we can do to say, hey, if you're going to be a gun owner, you got to be responsible for it. And, you need to be accountable for those actions. Now, that's just my opinion. And, I know what the city of San Jose did. I believe it's Senator Cortese. I could be wrong, but I think it's actually Senator Cortese that's introducing similar legislation at the state level, and to see if we can get a program like that going, again, to just do more to help really stem the cost of these really terrible costs of gun violence that are just wrecking our communities, when those things should be reinvested into things like social service programs, right? After school programs for kids, right? And it's the fact that so much money is going to, frivolous things that are just taking resources from where they should be. I mean, that's me on my soapbox, and so I'll stop, but appreciate the question, Crystal.
Okay, well, very good. I don't see any other questions. I think, Wendy, you've covered every possible thing. So, so maybe we can thank you very much for coming, and feel free to stay on. And as we go to Captain Lima, I'll just, by way of introduction, Captain Lima joined the Sunnyvale Department of Public Services Department as a public safety officer in training in 2002. Was promoted to the rank of lieutenant in 2014, and I don't have the date here, but more recently promoted to captain. He holds a Bachelor of Science degree in Criminal Justice Administration from San Jose State University. And during his tenure with the department, he has held a variety of assignments, which I won't even attempt to list because it looks like every possible position in the in DPS. So go ahead, Captain Lima.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much for that nice introduction, Mike. And thank you for you guys for allowing me to be here and talk to you guys a little bit about gun safety. And Wendy, thank you so much. I mean, the county is doing just fantastic stuff, and it's great to hear all the things you guys are working on. We've worked closely with Marissa and the GRIP team, and you guys are doing fantastic work. So, man, you sure you got a very detailed and a lot of great stuff going on. So thank you. And then I just think, I'm proud to be part of Sunnyvale DPS the last 20 years. And I think as with your club and all residents of Sunnyvale, you guys be pretty proud and happy just the fact that, the leadership we have with Mayor Klein and Councilmember Melton and getting on the forefront of some, pretty strong municipal codes and just trying to do our best we can at the local level is great. So thank you guys for that. But for DPS, gun safety, what I'm here to specifically talk about is our program with Project Child Safe. So one of the issues with gun violence is obviously how do people access guns, and also trying to prevent accidental deaths with legal firearm owners and that type of thing. So number one, if you're a gun owner, there's laws on the books. You need to be responsible. We talked about that. Gun storage, having it in a safe, taking gun classes to try and prevent. Say your house gets burglarized. Sometimes we see criminals having access to legally owned guns through crime like burglaries. So if you're an owner, you want to be responsible, have a good safe, keep it locked up, and those types of things. And then the flip side, the real reason I'm here is to talk about the accidental in-home deaths with firearms. So like I said, DPS partnered with Project Child Safe back in November of 2022. And what that program is, it's a national program. It's been around for about 2 decades. And what they do is they provide gun locks and an information packet on how to use that gun lock to all gun owners. So they've distributed 38 million kits nationwide in the last 2 decades. And that's with, once you purchase a firearm, you get the gun kit with it. And that's what they've done at a national level. There's thousands of departments that partner with them. It's a really great program. And like I said, we partnered with them in 2022. We received 100 gun safety kits at DPS. And what that means is simply that any resident of Sunnyvale can come right to Sunnyvale DPS headquarters at 700 All-America Way. They can walk right in with no questions asked, and we'll provide you free of charge the gun safety kit with instructions and all that great stuff. So it's a good program. They have a little bit of data on the safety, and since 2005 to 2015 nationwide, this program has seen a 38% decrease in accidental deaths in the home because of their gun locks. So pretty simple. That's the large view of what the program is, how we participate in it. And again, you can just come right in, pick up our red phone outside of DPS. We'll let you in, and we'll get you one of those gun locks and the education pamphlet to go with it. So that's what we have to offer. It's one little thing that each responsible gun owner can do, because I've known of a few accidents in the home, and they're just horrific, terrible things that I'm sure no one wants to go through. So that's the part that we can do to help out, and it's available to anyone that wants it. And that's pretty much it. I sent a couple documents over to Mike that he might be able to share with you guys as far as infographics, more about the program. They do have a website, projectchildsafe.org, if you guys want to go to that and get more information. But that's pretty much it. If anyone has any questions, more than happy to do the best I can to answer it. But yeah, that's pretty much it as far as that program goes. So thanks again for allowing me to come here and speak to you guys about it.
Yeah, thanks for being here. Are there any plans to, publicize this program, let's say through, I'm not sure Sunnyvale has a health fair. They have in the past, but, or let's say farmers market or state of the city, or, booths that there are a lot of, you go to these events and there are a lot of, maybe a booth for water conservation or things like that. So any plans to do something like that?
Nothing that's in the works right now, but certainly I think that's a great idea. And I'm sure my chief wouldn't mind if we got that going. So it's something I can look at that and get back to you if we have something like that planned, but should be easy to do. We can also push it out on social media to get the word out. So yeah, definitely we can work on those things.
Somebody mentioned to me, I don't know if it's true, that if you buy a new gun, they give you a gun lock with it. Is that, I mean, is that a requirement or just something you do as a courtesy, or do you know anything about that?
That is true. So if you buy a new gun, the gun will come with a gun lock.
Is that
So
a
that's-
requirement or just something they do as a?
I believe it's a requirement. It should be a law, as far as I'm concerned. As far as I know, I believe it's a law, from the gun manufacturers in the state at the state level. So every gun you buy will come with one. But obviously, there's people, like you said, hey, with the gun buybacks, there's guns floating around, whether they've been inherited or whatnot. Someone might have an older gun that was passed down to them that they want to have locked up, and that's where the program could come in to help out.
Right. Let's see, Crystal, you have a question?
Yeah, so thank you so much, Captain Lima. This is really helpful. I was just to the same point of Mike's comment. I think it's really important to get the message out to the people that have the guns. And is there any kind of database or any way to notify gun owners that this service is available, right? As opposed to trying to just notify the whole city. If we could notify the people that have guns, that
Right.
would be the best.
That's a good question. I don't think I have the exact answer to that right now for you, but that's something I can look into and I can get back to you on that. It would just have to come down to how we could get that data and contact all of them. It would be obviously a lot of people, as Wendy said, there's a lot of owners out there, but I think that's a great idea. I'd have to have time to look into how we could actually do that. But great idea, thank you.
Sue?
Sorry. Thank you for your presentation. This has been pretty mysterious. We just heard, kind of in the milieu, there's a gun lock you can get for free, but what, so thank you for clarifying what's going on and what you plan to do in the future. I think it's a great move. I just wondered, I've got a super dumb question, but I've never had a gun. I never owned a gun, but what is a gun safety lock? Does it go on the gun? Do you have to have a cabinet that locks, or what the heck is it?
No, that's a great question. That's not a dumb question at all. No, it's simply, it's like a bike lock. I mean, it's just a small, if you saw just a normal lock, if you went to Home Depot to get a lock for your fence, like a key lock, like a master lock, that's the locking mechanism. And it has about an 8-inch loop of steel covered by rubber that you just loop through. You basically loop through the trigger guard, loop it through the slide. If you're not familiar with guns, right, the barrel, you can loop it through the barrel, loop it through the the trigger mechanism, and it just locks like a master lock. Very, very simple. And I think I'm sure Mike will share the documents I sent. There's a picture of it, but it's not very sophisticated. Pretty cheap, pretty easy. It's just a long cable on a master lock.
Oh, that's great. That's great. So nobody has to buy anything else to use this. I mean, that's
free.
it.
That's it.
Yeah.
So
okay.
if you can, it's good because if you can't afford a safe, I mean, safes can be very expensive, right? And like I said, the law requires, if you're a gun owner, you're required to lock up your guns and keep them safe. So, some people can't afford, but these safes can cost thousands of dollars. And here you can get yourself a free gun lock right here. So
yeah, that's super. That's just super. Maybe we should just have a big banner, that goes across DPS that says free gun locks. Come in today.
Well, I mean, I can tell you what, I mean, it's super easy to put out a social media post. That's something I'll start working on today. So I get, you guys can look for that very soon. That'll be something we can do rapidly to get the work, start getting the word out. It obviously won't reach everybody, but it's a start, and it's easy to do. So we'll get that going today or tomorrow.
So I'm
Great.
sharing one of the documents. Can you see that?
I think there's
Uh-huh.
I thought there was a photo on one of them. If you scroll down, maybe not. Yeah, if you look way at the bottom of that one, Mike. The very bottom.
The other one, this one?
This one, if you go all the way to the bottom of the one, the infographic.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so you see the logo.
Oh,
See all
here.
the-
Down
yeah,
here.
Oh,
I see it.
Yep, that's it. So pretty, nothing too sophisticated.
Hmm. Yeah, it looks like you could still fire the gun with that on.
Well, no, it won't, because it feeds through the barrel, and it feeds through the slide. So if the
Oh.
slide, if the top part of the gun, the slide doesn't cycle, then the gun won't fire.
Okay, Mayor Klein?
If that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, I understand.
Thank you. And thank you, Captain Lima, for your service and
Sure.
getting this program going. You know, I took it to the city manager in chief, I think July or August of last year, and happy that partnership ended up working out. What kind of uptake have we had so far on this? Any idea? Or you know, I know it's, and I know you publicized it, I think back in October, and actually I think you publicized it just a few weeks ago, because I was talking to a resident about it, and about I think the next day you ended up posting something or something on social media.
Yeah, we can certainly do it again. You know, it's never going to hurt to keep doing it.
Yeah.
I'd have to check on exactly how many we've given out, but you know, say if I was to estimate, probably 20 or so have been given out.
That's fantastic. And from you know, and if there's ever any additional funds needed to help match, you know, I know it's partially funded by both partners, I think, but definitely, or does Project Child Safe pay for everything? I couldn't remember.
I believe they pay for all of it. I believe
Okay,
I'm pretty sure they're
then it's fantastic. Yeah, no, it's great to see this happening in the community, and it's like you don't know how many, you know, accidental shootings or you know, the big thing now is mental health and
Right.
and potential suicides this prevents. So thank you for that, and thanks for you know, publicizing the program. Great. Thanks.
Absolutely. Thank you, sir. All right. Any other questions?
I can point out that this is funded by the National Shooting Sports Foundation, which, you know, as gun safety advocates, we feel like we're on the other side of the issue from them. But I'm really pleased to see this major contribution they're making and getting involved in a nationwide program that's been going on for some time. And I've been surprised why some of these organizations don't get behind more training, because they could run the training, and you know, and it's just part of many other areas like boating, for example. There's a lot of organizations that get involved in safe boating and, you know, and training and all this stuff, because it's part and parcel of the whole part of ownership. So I'm really glad to see this happening. It's obviously, and as you and Wendy pointed out, I mean, there are so many guns out there. Even if you stopped sales of all guns today, there's still be more guns than there are people in the country. And so things like gun locks and the restraining orders are ways to deal with the guns that are already there. And I think you kind of touched on it, but we always kind of overlook suicide as a major gun violence issue. And I don't know if you have any comments about that, but a big thing about this is that it prevents, let's say, other family members from using these guns in that way.
No, absolutely. I mean, you're bringing up fantastic points, and you know, obviously it's a complex problem that needs solutions from many different angles. And I think it's great. I think at the end of the day, whether you're a gun owner or not, I think we all want the same thing, right? Is to stop these mass shootings, stop these murders. They're absolutely horrible. I mean, I've heard someone talking about their children. I have kids in school, and I mean, it makes me sick to my stomach that they have to do drills and barricade doors. So we all definitely want we have the same goals for sure. So yeah, I think we just have to keep plugging away, keep advertising things, look for different ways to get the word out to make guns as safe as possible. I mean, they're like you said, even if we ban guns tomorrow, they're not going away anytime soon. So we have to do the best we can as a community to find ways to reduce it. And yeah, we sure do see them used, unfortunately, in suicides. People do have access to a family member's gun. And it's something that it just makes it easier for them to facilitate, that suicide, right? Where, hey, if it was harder to get the gun, maybe that buys them 1 or 2 days where they could have gotten some help, right? So yeah, it's a fantastic point, and it's very true. If we can, like I said, get them an extra half a day or a day to rethink it or get some intervention, that's going to be a good thing.
Well, I don't see any other questions. I guess one thing that it's really not DPS, but at one time the schools were doing some kind of a program of something like Just Ask or Just Ask. So if your kids are going over somewhere, ask the other family, do you have any guns? Any guns laying around? It seems like,
Yeah.
Almost you shouldn't need to ask that, but encouraging parents to just ask that question. But I haven't seen anything about that lately, so I don't know.
Yeah, I'd have to check with our crime prevention unit to see if we have some kind of education like that going on. But I think to your point, it just goes into, how do we as community members and parents and people that love our children, how do we, prevent things? And I don't think, at least have that conversation with your child. Hey, whether you're going to ask or not, at least educate them so they know what to be on the lookout for. If they see something laying around at a house, at least they're educated on it. They can, either find a way to get out of the house or leave or do something. So, having that conversation, talking about it. And unfortunately, we have to have these talks with our kids nowadays, but we have to. So.
And just a final on another subject, just a final question about what's going on with the new construction at DPS. I saw the had a chance to tour the new building, and are there other things going on, or is that all fully operational? Or
no, a lot of great things are going on, and I don't want to steal anyone's thunder. I can let the mayor talk about more they've done. Again, the mayor and city council has done a great job of getting funding and having a great project going on for City Hall, DPS. So yeah, one of the first buildings opened up at DPS, the OES Center, which I'm sitting in right now. It's functioning. It's going great. It's modern. It's going to have full capabilities for Office of Emergency Services. If we have a big event, we have a great space right here, right next to me. That's going to have fantastic technology, a big workspace to get all of our groups together to manage emergencies. And then, yeah, the remodel of DPS headquarters is underway. Just plugging along. I don't think it'd be too much longer, maybe several months. And I know the mayor and city council is excited to move into their new building across the street in a couple months. So it's definitely good things happening. No credit whatsoever from DPS. That's all on our city council and our citizens for allowing us to have this great equipment. So thank you, but it's plugging along great.
okay, I see Councilmember Milton has a comment.
Oh, thanks, Mike. I'm just inspired by Captain Lima's comments about the new EOC building, $20 million investment by the city. Tremendous investment and hard work by the city, our residents, taxpayers, city council today, Mayor Klein, prior city councils getting this across the finish line. And Mayor Klein may have some thoughts about when the new city hall is going to be opening up. That's of course tremendously exciting. And so I just felt like I wanted to jump in and spread and share in the excitement. Thank you.
All right. Well, thanks. Oh, go ahead, Mayor.
Sure. So staff is moving in currently March 20th that week, and there'll be some sort of ribbon cutting in April. but and that will, at that point, just to give people a heads up in March, just a quick update on the city center, on City Hall. Olive Avenue will be reopening, so the north side of the City Hall will now be open, and then the south side will close as they start tearing down the old City Hall, the annex, and everything else. So, but there'll be some event in April, but the big event ultimately will be in the fall, when the grounds are complete and the whole, basically the 6 acres of open space are now open. But that's a quick update on that standpoint. But yeah, looking forward to it. And I know city staff are ready to move in, as we sat all day Thursday in the council chambers, and it was either too hot or too cold or noisy, or, so looking forward to the new City Hall. So thanks.
That's good. Maybe in the new council chambers, Councilmember Mellinger won't have to wear a hat anymore. So we'll see. See what happens. Thank you again, Captain Lima, for coming and talking to us today.
You're welcome. Thanks for allowing me the time.
And as we transition to the next topic, I just want to mention we're lucky to be living in California. I noticed Missouri, where I'm from originally, most of my family's there. There is no age limit on who can carry a firearm. No age limit. Recently, someone introduced a bill at the request of public safety to say that at least as your 5-year-old is carrying an AK-47 around the neighborhood, they have to be under adult supervision, and that failed in the legislature. So we're lucky to be living where we are. So I guess I'll turn it over to Crystal for the next part of the meeting.
Yeah, great. Thank you. Mike, I was wondering if you could pull up the slide and share, or the slide presentation.
Okay.
Andy, or give me sharing privileges.
Oh, well, why don't I give you, I've got it open here, but it's on one of 200 tabs on my computer. So.
All right. And just following up on Mike's point about glad we live in California, I do often think, as much as we're not done with gun safety laws and making improvements in those areas, I just kind of wonder with prevention, you never know what would have happened if those laws weren't there, and how many people are alive today living in California that might not be if we didn't have the laws that we have. Okay, so next we are transitioning into a summary of the study issue and budget issue workshop that happened on Thursday this week. And so that was an all-day session with the city council and staff. And if you all didn't get to attend, we're going to give a summary. And a number of us are going to be doing it because there were a lot of study issues and budget issues, 35, I believe. And so we're going to share that load between Martin Pine, Charlene Liu, myself, and Mike Cerrone. So let me just pull up the presentation here. Just a second. All right. See my screen because I'm on the wrong slide here. All right. I'm presenting? You guys can see it?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Okay, so took a little screenshot of my when I was watching the event on Zoom, and so that's what we have here. So again, City Council had their study issue and budget issue workshop on Thursday. It was all day, and they ranked the study issues by each department. And the next step is for the city manager to review the staff bandwidth and costs and identify which of the ranked study issues can be above the line and will be included in the budget and worked on in the coming year. So not everything that was ranked in this session, it will actually be funded. But if they don't get funded, then they will return to council for review and ranking in the following year. All right, as I mentioned, because there are so many to cover, we're sharing the load with a number of people who are going to talk about kind of the land use and planning aspects, bicycle and pedestrian aspects, environmental, and then Mike gets to close us out with everything else. And
Yeah,
there were also
Crystal, it's worth mentioning that which confused me initially, and you know, when I first looked at this a few years ago, that they are ranked within a department because that's where the competition for resources is. So, you know, I mean, that's just as we look at these, the ranking is within a department, which is sort of within a topic in a way.
right. Yeah, and so sometimes the departments don't line up exactly with these topics. So for example, in bicycle and pedestrian, there's a number of different departments that that had bicycle and pedestrian related study issues. So there's a little bit of mixing in this presentation. All right, so let's see, Martin, are you?
Yeah, although I was going to say that not all of these are actually land use issues, but these are the CDD issues, which include the ones relating to land use and also include a few that really aren't. But and I'll start with actually a couple that aren't. There were a number of there were 3 different study issues relating to the heritage resource inventory relating to visitation to heritage and landmark resources. And you'll notice a couple of them got deferred. That was CDD 1802 and 1906. And the thought that I kind of picked up from council's discussion on that was that it was best to kind of wait for those until we've updated the historical context statement to include historical contributions made by Asian Americans and other minority groups. And that was the 3rd ranked study issue. That's CDD 19-04. So I kind of did that in a weird order, but so that study issue 19-04, which would expand on the current historical context statement, which was adopted in 2012, and it's kind of the framework for setting out for directing the heritage preservation program in the city. And the study would expand on it to include information on minority groups that are not as currently referenced, that are not as currently kind of described in our current kind of heritage / historical context, as it were. So that was the 3rd ranked study issue. But I'll go back to the deferrals. The other study issue that got deferred, and as you can see, there were 9 study issues for CDD, and all of them were actually supported by staff. So council had to kind of make the tough decisions as to say which study issues should at least be thought about going through all of should at least be thought about to go through this year. And I mean, we can revisit this after the budget works up, but I would be utterly shocked if all 5 study issues that got ranked actually made it into this year's budget. I would like to know where the money, I would be very happy because it means that Sunnyvale basically found a pot of gold under the rainbow, but that's not likely to happen. But anyway, so the other issue that got deferred was CD 23-04. That's to explore adding a public art requirement for high density residential developments. Right now we have we do have public art requirements for some development in the city, but we don't do that for residential developments. Now, the concern with that, now the benefit of this is that we get more art. We get more art we'd get more art and we get more art where people would see it because they're tied to density residential developments. Those, I mean, they generally look okay, but like they'd look better, and it would be, and since there'd be high, and since it's would be in a high density area, you'd have people being able to have all the people that live there seeing it, all the people that live near there being able to see it regularly. The downside, of course, is if you're adding an art requirement, you're making building more expensive. So and given that housing already costs a significant amount to build in the city and anywhere in this area, frankly, that then having just one more reason for making it expensive could be a reason that developments end up not penciling. So anyway, council voted to defer that and consider it in a future year when there's less study issues on CDD's plate. The other one that, and at this point, I think it's best for me to just go down in order of council ranking, which is also the order in which these are likely to actually happen at least this year. We have CDD 23-05, which was kind of the late ad. This one actually didn't go to commissions. This one got proposed at the study issue workshop, so it didn't go, and so that's why you don't see a commission rank on it, because it got proposed after the commission ranking, and that was the highest ranked council study issue, which is to evaluate, which is based on concerns about unhoused residents and lack of privacy at the Sunnyvale shelter. We heard this at the January 24th public hearing on study issues. This study would look at the existing Sunnyvale shelter capacity. It would determine what kind of expanded emergent or additional emergency housing options are needed to meet needs of unhoused families in Sunnyvale, families with minor children. It would review the best practices and essentially see consider essentially what needs could be achieved within the city to meet their needs if it finds that existing resources are inadequate. So that was the highest ranked study issue. It doesn't require it. It does not. Well, the study issue paper says it doesn't anticipate needing an outside consultant, or once appropriate staffing is added. There's a different study issue that's ongoing to hire a full-time position to focus on house services within CDD, and that would probably go happen in the near term per staff commentary at the strategic workshop. So those things that's kind of playing together, but anyway, that was the council first ranked study issue. The second one is actually a kind of a combined study issue, because 23-01 and 23-03 are both proposing nexus studies regarding the first one of which is to increase the inclusionary housing requirement. It's current in new residential development. It's currently 15%. This would look at whether it can be increased to 20%. What kind of can we do that without causing significant adverse impacts, and whether we can build the housing, etc. The other is just The other one was to review and update the housing in lieu fees. This is something that gets done periodically, where there's actually like we just looked at the in lieu fees for commercial development. So this would look at the in lieu fees for a rental and ownership housing, see if they need to be raised to keep pace with the cost of housing, the cost of affordable housing, which keep going up. And I should probably back up and explain that the in lieu fees is paid for a developer, or that instead of building affordable housing in their own units, they can pay in lieu fees that will subsidize inclusionary housing via the city. So those were combined because and that was ranked second. I covered the historical context statement. That was third. Fourth is consider modifications relating to the Sunnyvale Municipal Code relating to undergrounding utilities. That one was kind of this one was a response to the Fremont Corners development, which used a state density bonus law waiver to get out of the city's existing requirement for undergrounding utilities. And this would explore whether there are health and safety concerns relating to undergrounding utilities that we could establish more clearly in the municipal code because there are state density bonus law exceptions for specific health and safety, for waiving specific health and safety protections that are defined. And the last one ranked, the fifth ranked study issue is 23-02. So there are a number of legal non-conforming single and two-family dwellings in the city. The study, there was a previous study issue that actually just finished, that was to make changes in the municipal code that makes these single and two-family dwellings able to develop. Prior to the passage of that study issue, they were kind of, you couldn't make a lot of changes to those properties because of the zoning. So the previous study allowed those units, well, the property owners rather, to make renovations, to have new construction on their development without it being bounced due to the non-conforming nature of the properties. However, what this would do is it would go further and actually rezone and change the general plan for 22. It's actually, I want 25 or 26. There was a scoping amendment that council adopted to it to include a couple more period park units, but that would actually rezone them to be actually residential, and that would actually allow the property owners to do a few more things. The previous change didn't allow the construction of duo units and lots and SB9 lot splits. There are, I believe, still some restrictions on ADUs construction, so this would fix that. And I believe that does it for CDD.
Right, thank you so much.
I don't know if you want to take questions now, or comments now, or after we get through all the study issues.
Why don't we do it now for this group of study issues? If there's any questions, comments,
Or if any of the council members want to correct me. As both of them put their hands up.
yes, go ahead, Mayor Klein.
I'll just do a quick comment, and and I just wanted to just clarify, when staff supports a study issue, and ranks it, they're basically supporting it for discussion at the study session. They're not necessarily saying that this is, and that's why they prioritize, okay, here's what we think are really hot top priority, here's the bottom, but even the defers, they say, okay, it's defer to a future study workshop as opposed to having a discussion at the current study workshop. And council usually at least discusses almost everything, even those that are deferred or dropped, council goes through a big discussion on. But the concept of supporting is a little, it's not like, oh, staff says this has to be done, but it's something that they think has value in the coming year and wants council to give feedback on the ranking and from a process standpoint. That's the only thing. And I won't get into any of the details as far as that's concerned. I think you captured the majority of it very well, Martin. Thank you.
Okay, go ahead, Councilmember Melton.
Yeah, thanks, Crystal. And I'll concur with Mayor Klein. Martin, as the chair of the Sunnyvale Planning Commission, really has a tight grip on this land use policy type stuff. So I really appreciate, Martin, your walkthrough of the land use things. And I want to give a tip of the cap to Mayor Larry Klein. By virtue of seniority on the dais, I'm now sitting on Larry's left elbow, and you may see me whisper sometimes to Larry my observations of what's going on, or maybe somebody's talking too long, and I'll whisper things to Larry, but he's got a really good grip on reading the room and running an efficient hearing. So I wanted to say that. Just some additional thoughts that I wanted to toss in. I said at the public hearing that it was the first time I've ever seen staff for CDD not walk in the room with any defer or drop proposals. I've never seen that before. So they said, hey man, these are all rankable. And I said to the city manager, I said, I kind of don't want to rank all of these because that puts the onus on the shoulders of the city manager when he draws the line to have a lot of things below the line. And I don't think that's okay. I want council to drop some of the issues or defer some of the issues. So when the city manager draws the line, there's not an onerous number of things below the line. I think we ended up passing a good list. I think they're ranked appropriately. Just as a bit of numerology, I actually ranked CDD 2301/2303. I put that as number 5 on my piece of paper because I knew, just reading the room, that it was going to pass as number 2. I could tell, but I wanted to give a boost numerically to the one Martin talked about undergrounding utilities 2205. So that was just a bit of numeric strategizing to try to give a boost to 2205, which I sponsored, like Martin said, arising out of the whole Fremont Corners thing. Thanks, Crystal, for letting me jump in for a few seconds.
Yeah, thank you. Let's see, Donna, you have a question.
Yes, just a quick clarification. I was really pleased to see the council ranking 2305 as number 1, since it's very near and dear to my heart, especially this week when I was dealing with a family of 5 people and their only choice was to stay in the car with his children because the shelter was full. But we're working on that, but the shelter is really the responsibility of not Sunnyvale, but the North County. It's the North County shelter. So it's a county managed facility and funding. So is this telling me that Sunnyvale would be considering getting into creating additional shelters that would be managed by Sunnyvale or funded completely by Sunnyvale? I'm done.
I'll pass that to Mayor Klein to answer that.
I'll just give a quick summary. Yes, you're absolutely right, and I do have, I've had ongoing issues or discussions with Supervisor Lee on what could be done at the Hamlin shelter specifically for families, and we've looked at several options. Supposedly Home First doesn't want to have, let's say, portable housing in the parking lot. To me, this is the best solution for families, so that families could be in the parking lot, use the same facilities, But, so we're still working on that in the background. One of the things that the council did do, unanimously agreed that supported, supporting unhoused our unhoused community was a strategic priority back in January. But part of that discussion was conceivably doing a transitional housing on city property. And so that's something that's also going on. And so that, this is a little bit of a grab bag of let's talk to the different stakeholders. Let's continue to look at opportunities. And so that transitional housing, much conceivably like the Life Moves in Mountain View, would kind of fall under this umbrella. And so it's looking for grants, it's looking for home key funding. There's a lot of things that this looks for, but it's also dealing directly with the county to try to, prioritize. And we'll talk about CDD and I think CDD or OCM in a few moments. But we'll have a housing unhoused manager, unhoused point of contact to a certain degree within the city. And that's some of the things that those efforts that they'd be looking at, whether or not it's working with the county, SCS, helping hands downtown streets for what can be done at the county shelter, or what it would, or the efforts to put a transitional housing on city property. So yes, both of those are part of that program. And that's why, I think this reflected January's change that council did to make, supporting the unhoused community part of our strategic priorities. Hope that helps.
Yes, certainly. And Councilmember Melton, you want to weigh in?
Yeah, I'll just jump in briefly. Tremendous leadership by Mayor Klein for the thing we're thinking about in Sunnyvale that Larry described. I'll also mention, that will cost money to operate that if it can come to fruition. So that's something to watch out for. And also, I've been talking to our colleague council members in the city of Santa Clara. I would ask advocates to dial into a project that the city of Santa Clara and the county of Santa Clara are working on at the intersection of Lawrence and Benton. Another project with Life Moves and some potential funding from third-party sources. So there's a lot of action and advocacy needed that folks can absolutely jump in on. Thank you.
Okay, great. I don't see any other questions on this topic. So now I'm going to move to the next topic, which is going to be discussed by Charlene Liu. And this is about the bicycle and pedestrian related study issues. So Charlene is the lead of Bike Sunnyvale, which is a local team of the Silicon Valley Bicycle Coalition. And in her role, she leads advocacy for bicycle safety in Sunnyvale, as well as pedestrian safety. And she has a vision to transform Sunnyvale into a bikeable and walkable community for the benefit of Sunnyvale residents and visitors and for the environment.
Got you in here. I kept pressing this.
Yeah, got to have it on first. And then you can increase the volume if you like.
Can't hear anything yet.
Well, they're not saying anything.
Yeah, they are.
All right, Charlene, are you?
Yes, thanks, Crystal. So this slide is organized a little differently from Martin's slide in that it is about just the bike and pedestrian study issues, whereas Martin's slide was organized by all the CDW issues. So that included different topics. So I just wanted to tell you that these aren't all the DPW study issues. There were many more DPW issues, and they will appear in subsequent slides that Mike and Crystal will be presenting. So the first study issue on the slide is DPW 2101. They're the bike lanes on Hollenbeck Avenue, south of El Camino Real, stretching to Homestead Road. This study issue has a history of being the top priority for BPAC and for Bike Sunnyvale for the last two study issue sessions. So last year we ranked it number one, both BPAC and Bike Sunnyvale. And this year we ranked it #1 as well. The importance of Hollenbeck Avenue bike lanes is large. It completes the north-south throughway for bikes from the very northern border of Sunnyvale, which is at the bay, to all the way to the Cupertino border. It does that in conjunction with Sunnyvale Avenue and Borregas Avenue. So it's a good commuting route for people who, for example, might need to work in Moffett Park. They will take it. People who are going to Cupertino, maybe they live there from going home from Caltrain. I have seen people take that, and I used to take it when I was riding Caltrain. And then people who live south of El Camino use it to go to downtown, the Civic Center, the library as well, and the farmers market. There's also a number of like 4 churches on Hollenbeck. There are about 7 schools that Hollenbeck serves, including the 2 high schools, Homestead and Fremont, and Cherry Chase and De Anza College. And then there's also Challenger, although that's a private school, so not as many people bike to Challenger. And so this is why Hollenbeck's important. Hollenbeck is also really the only north-south corridor in conjunction with Sunnyvale Avenue and Borregas that is kind of safe and centrally located. So there's no other north-south road that can compare to Hollenbeck. There's Sunnyvale Saratoga, but that is not a safe road to bike on currently in its current state. It's 6 lanes of road of car lanes, and cars are going 50 miles per hour. And then the other streets east of Sunnyvale Saratoga are Lawrence and Wolf, and those are even more dangerous. And then to the west of Hollenbeck, there is Mary Avenue and Bernardo, which are relatively safe. But they are not so centrally located. It's sort of way to the west of Sunnyvale. So that's why Hollenbeck is such an important street to put bike lanes on. And if we were to put bike lanes on there, we wouldn't have to get rid of parking. We could keep parking on one side of the street, and that would provide plenty of parking for the residents on there. So it got ranked relatively highly, DPW 3. It lost to DPW. The first rank one is the high school transportation options study that got ranked #1. And we're kind of happy about that too, because if we can find a way for high schoolers to bike to school, then that is related to improving biking. So that is good. And then the other study issue that outranked Hollenbeck bike lanes is the Crows. The Crows won over Hollenbeck. The next study issue that is on this slide is DPW 2308. It is the metrics study issue that Bike Sunnyvale was championing. And so the importance of having metrics for bike and pedestrian development is that it will inform what we do, and it will make sure that what we're doing is actually improving biking and pedestrian safety and ridership. So currently there are sort of metrics, they're kind of hidden to the public, and they're not comprehensive. So this is why the study issue was so important to us. It was Bike Sunnyvale's #2 ranked study issue. And part of this metric study issue was to look for a way to publicly publish it on the city website so that it was easy for the public to go look at how many people were killed this year on bikes, how many people were killed walking. And every year there's a few that are killed. And we want to track it over time to see that it's decreasing. But currently that doesn't exist. And so we don't know We don't know how well it's doing unless we dig into the archives. And even if we dig into the archives, it's not there. Not all of it's there. And then another thing is like safe routes to school metrics, for example, how many kids are biking to school? We don't know how that's changing over time either. It's actually, as far as I can tell, I dug into the archives and I could not find that information. So we don't know how well the Safe Routes to School program is doing. We don't know what they're doing. So that's why metrics are so important, to make sure that we're spending our money wisely and make sure that we're improving. The next line study issue there is DPW 2305, Vision Zero redesign of Borregas Avenue. And this was a study issue proposed by Richard Mellinger. And he said it was mostly for pedestrian safety rather than bike safety. There's already bike lanes on Borregas, and I have biked it multiple times and I feel safe on it. Also because Borregas is kind of a quiet street as far as cars go. So that's pretty sufficient. But for the pedestrians, it could be better. So that's why we have that. And it was deferred to a future date, I guess next year. Then the next study issue is DPW 2302, develop a safe routes to parks master plan. So currently we do have a safe routes to school plan as part of the active transportation plan of the city. So this is on top of that to develop the safe routes to parks. And the idea is there's many community members who would like to bike and walk to parks, namely families and maybe people with dogs. And so this would be helpful, but it was dropped. And then the next study issue is FIN 2201. This is in the finance department. Explore a general election ballot measure to fund bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure projects. So at first, we were very interested in that because we know that funding for bike and ped projects is one of the probably the biggest impediment to making progress in bike and ped. But staff recommended dropping it. BPAC had ranked it number 2. Bike Sunnyvale eventually did not, we were limiting ourselves to supporting 2. Of course, we support all bike and ped study issues, but we were limiting ourselves to supporting 2 as our top 2. And so this wasn't one of them. And eventually it was dropped. And then the last item on there is a budget proposal, and it's related to bike and ped 2023-02. Bicycle and Pedestrian Collision Investigation Pilot Program. And this was a Richard Mellinger proposal. I think it's a very good proposal. And it doesn't cost that much money, $60,000. $20,000 each toward the study of the first 3 severe collisions that results in a severe injury or a death. And that will happen this coming year. So it's going to study in sort of more of an engineering infrastructure point of view about why did this person get killed? Was there something that the city can do in designing its streets to have prevented it? So this is a good methodical way to improve not just that location where that person got killed, but throughout the city, because that sort of problem will happen again and again until we can build in deterrence to such catastrophic collisions. Yep. So those are it. Any questions?
Yeah, thank you so much, Charlene. Looks like Councilmember Melton.
Oh, thanks, Crystal and Charlene. I wanted to say thank you for a great presentation. I cannot recall a previous study issue workshop where we've talked about so many bicycle pedestrian items. And I think that's a great reflection of a couple of things. Tremendous advocacy by Charlene and Bike Sunnyvale and the Sunnyvale Democratic Club about active transportation matters. And also just the reality that we need to get to 10% active transportation uses, which is one of the metrics called for in our active transportation plan. I just wanted to chime in on a couple of these. DPW 2302, I was one of the 5 who voted to drop that as a study issue. And my rationale is that we will absolutely have an opportunity to update the active transportation plan. It's in the budget. It's gonna happen. And that to me is the most appropriate time to add in another chapter to the active transportation plan for a safe route to parks master plan. And then one where I was very, very enthusiastic, and I really appreciate Councilmember Mellinger bringing up this budget issue, is the bicycle pedestrian collision investigation pilot program. I always say when there's a lot of pain in the community after a roadway fatality or a significant injury, that's when facts matter. And you know, when we had the terrible rash of 4 fatalities on our roadways last year, I led the charge with Chief No and City Manager Kent Steffens. I said, we need to start putting out factual statements of information about each of these incidences so that our community can rally around facts. And I view what Councilmember Mellinger has done here with this budget issue as an amplification of that. Just to put in some nuance, the city manager has the ability to choose which 3 KSI incidences will be investigated by the engineer. So if there's something where there's a big legal liability to the city manager can choose not to do that particular incident. And it's a really elegantly structured program because we have an existing toolbox of roadway engineering modifications. It's in our Vision Zero plan. So that's sort of a menu that this engineer would choose from in coming up with the recommendation for how to do things better. And what I said yesterday was, God willing, we will never have to use the money in this budget issue. Someday we're going to achieve the Vision Zero, a goal of 0 KSI on our roadways, and I'm committed to that. I'm a real stickler for sticking to policy, so it's difficult for me to support the Homestead Road project. I'd like to just see that tackled in a future iteration of the of our planning and policy documents, including the ATP. And Crystal, thank you for just letting me jump in for a few minutes with some thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mayor Klein.
I'll just and I commend, you know, Councilmember Melton on what he just said. You know, definitely, you know, having priority, and what Councilmember Mellinger did here was at least give us the opportunity to do further investigations for these. So I do think that has a lot of value. I did want to bring up Borregas, and thanks to Councilmember Mellinger for deciding to defer that issue. There's lots of, let's say, work happening along Borregas, along Morris, that whole Snail neighborhood. There's several federal, state, MTC funding projects. And so if you actually go back to that study issue, you see there's a lot of infrastructure work that's on the city's plate right now. And we have the appropriate funding. It's just getting it final design, getting it implemented, getting, you know, that neighborhood to be safer. So that was another reason why this was at least pushed out as we see what the impacts of that are. But happy that, you know, I think hopefully the Hollenbach Avenue bike lanes gets above the line. I do think that that's important, you know, and there's an opportunity there, much like we did along Sunnyvale Avenue, to make that whole corridor safer by removing some parking, but maintaining some parking also. So I do think that that's critical, and hopefully that gets studied and then added, to our future, to our permanent ATP. But thanks for, the advocacy of Bike Sunnyvale, SVBC, and so many people who brought up these issues. Thanks, Charlene.
Okay, thank you. And Sue, a quick question, because we do need to move on. You're muted.
Yeah. Okay. Charlene, hi. Can you tell me why the staff had drop for the Hollenbeck bike lanes? You might have covered it, but I didn't get it. Thank you.
Well, yes, I did read staff's reasoning for it's written up, but now I can't recall everything they said. In general, the staff recommended dropping every single bike and ped related study issue. So I just kind of didn't take their feedback seriously, and that's why I don't remember, because if you go with what staff says, there would be no bike and ped improvement going on in the city. But it is publicly available, what they say. Maybe, yeah, sorry.
Crystal, it's Russ. Do you mind if I jump in for a second? Because Sue has is that okay, Crystal?
Go ahead. Yes.
And thank you. I'll be brief because Sue has a great question. And again, I love Charlene's advocacy. So the position of staff is that the question of Hollenbeck had been asked and answered leading up to the 2020 adoption of the active transportation plan. And, for whatever reason, council did not put Hollenbeck into what is now the active transportation plan. So from a very policy oriented standpoint, staff, I think, is looking, here it is, we have an adopted active transportation plan. Hollenbeck's not in it. And that's where the drop recommendation came from. So thank you for letting me jump in for a second.
Oh, so I'm looking at what staff wrote. The first thing they said was that they don't want to do this study because it would remove parking on Hollenbeck. So that's what they said, and they said that would be a negative impact to parking needs of the residents. That's their main reason, front and center. So naturally, as I mentioned, it's not necessary to remove parking, all of the parking. You can keep parking on one side of the street along the whole stretch of Hollenbeck. So it's like these kinds of reasons that aren't completely realistic, that's why I don't take their comments seriously.
All right, I think we'll move on to the next group of study issues, which is environmental and sustainability related. So I'll be talking about this one. So there were actually, all of these were reviewed by the Sustainability Commission. There's a typo in the first one, SC-33 should be SC-3. Anyway, the first one that was ranked by council in the ESD department, which is Environmental Services Department, ranked first, is elimination of pesticides on city-owned property. And this is one that has been coming back to council for multiple years. And it is great to see it ranked as number one, although it has been ranked as number one before, and often, didn't get funded for a variety of reasons over the last years. But I'm excited that this one is ranked first. I really appreciated Mike Cerrone's advocacy for this at council in January, saying that, this is a decision that individual property owners make on their own. They can decide whether to use pesticides on their own property, But when the city uses pesticides on city-owned property, they're kind of making the decision for everyone, right? That uses those parks and those facilities. So this has been supported by staff every year, except last year they had recommended to defer because they were going to apply for a grant. The grant application didn't actually happen, so they also supported it this year. Anyway, so hopefully this one does get funded, and we'll be excited to see the results of that study. The one that was ranked second is, it's called climate budgeting, and this is kind of a relatively new concept, and there aren't a lot of cities that are using it, but it really dovetails well with the city's, known strength of financial budgeting and looking at a 20-year window, and really, taking measured measures to make sure that the financial stability of the city is maintained. And so this would just look at, for things that are coming up in the budget, the different projects, what kind of climate impact does it have? Is it advancing the goals of the city in terms of the climate action plan, or is it going to create additional greenhouse gas emissions, for example? Anyway, so the study is to look at, what are the different methods to do climate budgeting, and is this something that the city would benefit from incorporating in its future? So excited to see that one go forward as well, with the number 2 ranking for environmental services. The one that was ranked third is promotion and assessment of sustainable landscaping strategies. So this was put forward by the commission, Sustainability Commission, and it's to look at, all of the different methods, and so that includes drought tolerance. It includes gas-powered equipment such as lawnmowers and leaf blowers, the use of water-saving landscaping techniques, and holistically for the whole city, what are the different landscaping strategies that maybe could be adopted going forward. So that one was the third ranked. This next one is in a different department. It was ranked in Department of Public Works as number 4. We've seen a number of different pages so far with Department of Public Works. This one is about street tree repopulation with an equity lens. So also this was put forward by the Commission, Sustainability Commission, after we had a presentation about the urban canopy, and it was noted that there were a lot of street tree empty spaces, right, throughout the city that had, through whatever reason of disease or nuisance or various things, the trees had been taken out and not replaced. And so certainly adding and planting trees comes with a cost. You have to water them, you have to maintain them. And that is all, because they're on the street, it's the city's responsibility to do that. But anyway, so in line with the urban canopy plan, which had goals to increase the urban canopy, we wanted to see if we could study repopulating those street trees. And when doing that, looking at where there may be areas of the city that might be underserved with tree canopy. So specifically looking at that to prioritize those areas. All right, and then there were 2 that were dropped. One is the fleet planning for the electric vehicle transition. So the city maintains a fleet of vehicles, around 300 vehicles. And the idea here was to look at making a plan for, electric vehicle charging equipment at different locations, and identify the different types of vehicles that may be coming online in the future, so that those different types of vehicles could be purchased as electric instead of gas powered. Staff's recommendation was defer, but the council did decide to drop that one. I think mostly because the city already had a policy saying that anytime a new vehicle is proposed to be bought, that it has to be electric unless it is fully justified with the city manager of why it cannot be electric. So, that is part of the fleet planning, but I think, in my opinion, the fleet planning does go beyond that to looking at, being able to support electric vehicles that are purchased with the charging infrastructure. All right, and then the last one that was dropped is on improving community awareness of indoor air quality for climate resiliency and public health. And this one also proposed by Sustainability Commission. And I think this one, it was felt that a study issue about educating the community maybe wasn't what the council was thinking of. And again, they're trying to reduce the total number of things that are moving forward. So that one did get cut. And I'm thinking in the future that this could be a good opportunity for a sustainability speaker series event, and also myself and one of the other sustainability commissioners will be speaking about air quality at our next Sustainability Commission meeting on Tuesday, for those who are interested. All right, and that's it for the environmentally related ones. I see Margaret with a hand up. Go ahead.
I'm curious to know on that number one. Well, first of all, Sustainability Commission ranked at 33. Maybe I missed that. But does that include the pesticides on the Heritage Orchard, which is behind the museum?
It does. Yes, that the orchard is city-owned property, so that would be part of the study. Yes.
Interesting, because that's one place where lots and lots of pesticides are used. It's a toxic waste dump at this point. Thank you.
Yes, and that the Sustainability Commission ranked it 3rd, not 33rd. That's a typo on my part. Sorry.
Oh, I see. Thank you. Yeah, I thought that was a little weird.
It was actually tied for 2nd, and we had to vote again, and it ended up as 3rd. Councilmember Melton.
I'll just thank you, Crystal, jump in with a very short story. My advocacy on Thursday about ESD 1701, I said to my colleagues, come on, this study issue has been hanging out there since 2017. This is the 7th time we've looked at ESD 1701, and we either need to ram this thing across the finish line, it needs to be above the line and needs to get funded, or we need to kill it, but it's time. So I just wanted to jump in with my story of how I got to the mind frame of ranking ESD 1701, and they were all very good study issues. So thanks for letting me jump in, Crystal.
Sure. And Margaret.
Yeah, I have a question in some ways for Councilmember Melton, in that the Heritage Park, Heritage Orchard, is the management of that is not by city staff, but not the management, but what do we say, the treatment, the care of that is not by city staff. It's by Charlie Olson. So I'm wondering how they're going to get him to change his mind, because
we have. Thank you, Crystal. I'll jump in, and I know we're running out of time. The answer I can provide to Margaret right now is that the city has a study issue underway for, figure out the long-term strategy for the Heritage Museum and the Orchard. And I'll leave it at that. Happy to talk offline, or if Mayor Klein wants to jump in with any thoughts, but that's what I've got. Thank you.
I'll be very quick. So Margaret, we've actually already talked to Charlie about what chemicals he's using. And this has been, when this first study issue was first proposed, I think we had longer discussions with staff on it. But but we can dictate, conceivably the operation of that land, the use of that land. So, but that's a whole other thing, not for this discussion. Go ahead.
All right. We have actually used up our time, but I would like to see if Mike would like to continue on with a summary of some of the others, and if others are able to stay on a little bit longer. Mike?
Right. Well, I can just quickly touch on these without going through every one of them, but these are the first one is the one about alternative transportation for northern Sunnyvale students to get to Fremont High School, which is a real problem. It's a long way to go, and they're just using the VTA buses, which is less than ideal. So this has had a lot of discussion in the community. I believe we may be planning to talk about this at our March meeting. We'll see with a longer discussion. So that was ranked DPW 1. We also, the crows, don't need to say any more about that. That's DPW 2 for anybody who's eating downtown. The next one is evaluate the feasibility of banning the use of gas-powered leaf blowers and other small two-stroke motors. There, Mark Berman, Assemblymember Berman, passed a law last year to ban the sale of these gas-powered leaf blowers, but this bans the use at some, study at some point in time. And obviously, the last one is a policy for how the city names city parks. And so rank 7, DPW 7. Can you go to the next slide? Okay. Okay. These were all dropped or deferred. And I don't know if we mentioned it. Deferred, I believe, is it comes up at the next year. A drop means, I believe, it cannot come up. Doesn't come up for 2 years unless, I think it may be 4 council members vote to override that. So, it's defer is on life support, but drop is sort of dead. So there's a difference in, but some of these have come back, and let's see. There's some about dog parks here. The range of options for on-demand shuttle service. I thought that was particularly interesting. As Mayor Klein pointed out, a lot of the neighboring cities do have on-demand shuttle service. But council voted, majority voted to drop that. Let's see, why don't you go to the third slide since we are out of time. So the evaluate a full-time position to address homeless concerns in the city of Sunnyvale. This, I believe the mayor may have mentioned that earlier, and some of these are kind of confusing. I believe with the office of what is OCM? At any rate, this OCM and LRS, I believe there was only one issue in each of these departments. So ranking number 1 was pretty easy, but this full-time position to address homeless concerns, I believe, has been approved, and I know Marie Bernard has been advocating for this as well as a number of other people. So at any rate, I believe that's moving ahead. Assessment of needs for additional outdoor sports. There's a couple here that I won't even attempt to describe, but it's basically upgrading the city interface to the public, particularly the mobile apps. And the local rules for city council campaign contributions, that was deferred, which moves it past the 2024 election. So that's kind of a summary of those. And again, we're out of time, so. And oh yeah, these are both referred, which means they're moving ahead for discussion. The tree pruning contract, the tree pruning has just gotten behind the number of trees. So this is to increase the budget to catch up with the trees that city trees that need to be pruned. And this final one about service levels for the kind of the Airbnb type of rentals after the shooting at one rental. So these are both that have been referred for consideration, and so they're moving on. So that was a whirlwind summary. It may have seemed long, but it went on all day on Thursday. So.
Yes, thank you. Any quick questions on the last batch? And I did see in the chat, Peggy Brewster noted to everyone that she is planning to speak about Sunnyvale for Equity and Education, or SEE, at next month's meeting. And I'm sure we'll hear more about that shuttle service and advocacy for that as well. All right, don't see any. I also wanted to acknowledge, if we close this this agenda item and maybe move to any announcements that people would want to make. And I did want to acknowledge Emily Ramos is in attendance, and she is on our executive board for the club, and has recently given her resignation from the board, but not as a member of the club. And just wanted to give a shout out to her, and her reason for leaving the board is because she was recently appointed as a new city council member of Mountain View. So Emily, if you want to say anything, we'd welcome if you're still on, you can still hear us.
I can still hear you. I'm here. Was working on stuff in the background while I was listening to all that. Very fascinating about all your I guess their council priorities or work plan items for all the different boards. But yeah, I really enjoyed my time with this club. I don't plan on leaving the club, just the board. It was always kind of an odd ducky by being a Mountain View resident on this board. And yeah, I'm very happy to be on the Mountain View City Council. And even though this is the Democratic Club of Sunnyvale, Mountain View really is the best city. So
I'm going to mute you right
Sunnyvale
now.
is great too. But thank you, everyone. I enjoyed working with all of you.
Thank you for your service to the club. Larry, Mr. Mayor Klein.
Larry's fine. And Emily's comment is reason enough for removing her from the board, I think. But anyway, I just wanted to give an update or give a announcement. So there is, we've had these unity discussions. We hired equity, access, and inclusion manager over the last year. Jackie Guzman's been fantastic at running unity discussions for the last few years, but there is a meeting on Thursday, I think, March 16th. Is it a Thursday? I want to double check that. It's on my calendar. Yes. Thursday, March 16th. It's a discussion overcoming bigotry. And it's our ongoing kind of unity series event that'll be the first of 3 that are already planned for this year. It'll be in person and online. So, but it'll be 6 to 8 p.m. on Thursday, March 16th. More information to come. But ultimately, look forward to info on that. So happy that we're continuing those discussions. So thanks.
Great. Thank you for that announcement. I see Gail.
Yeah, Mayor Klein, when do you think we can have the new person that's going to be on staff for homelessness?
So this is the mixture, I think from in talking to the city manager, we prioritized it from a study, but we'd already kind of made that decision back in January to have this point of contact. I think it'll be coming, the position description, pay and all that should be coming up sometime in the next, I think the city manager said probably about 2 months, but so my guess is by mid-year, we have to put it out for bid and, put out the position description, the cost, all that. But, conceivably it's mid-year. So sometime in the second half of the year, we'll probably have someone on board.
Okay, thank you. Martin.
Yeah, I just wanted to, speaking of the executive board, you'll note that I just wanted to make sure people are aware that the executive board the regular executive board elections are in May. So if you are interested in being on the DCS board, there'll be a nominating committee that are the ones you should actually talk to, but it's something to at least start thinking about if you're interested.
And I'll just note that there's a strong history of people being on the board that end up on a city council somewhere. Right. Martin, would you have any information about the ADEM elections, or do you know?
Yeah. If you will have to give me a moment because I did not have that prepared, but
all right.
I can get you the results if you just hang on a moment.
All right, and
you should also give me a co-host so I can share my screen.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, and I will also note that the board is considering hosting a hybrid in-person and online meeting next month. We haven't made that decision yet, but we are looking at venues and ways that we can host a partly in-person meeting again.
Yeah, I should also announce that Livable Sunnyvale's next meeting, March 1st, will indeed be an in-person meeting at Sunnyvale Community Services. It'll be a hybrid meeting. So we don't know how it's going to go, but it's kind of an experiment. But so you can attend either in person or online. That's March 1st.
ADEM, I put ADEM results up. So the takeaway is that there weren't many people running, but
Right, and I see 2 of our council members there, as well as club member Margaret Okazumi. Great. Oops. Thank you, Martin. Any other announcements before we close out? All right, seeing none. Say holiday weekend. Hope everybody enjoys the rest of your long weekend, and thank you for attending and participating today. And we'll have our next meeting in March. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you.